Good evening and welcome to Cycle. On this program we will give you the latest stories about the Mongolian economy and political news in Mongolia. I'm Anwar Khabatar. On December 16th, the Intergovernmental Committee approved a $172,000 budget for the sustaining and passing down the Mongol BIYELGEE project. It was submitted by Mongolia in 2018 to preserve the Mongol BIYELGEE Mongolian traditional folk dance, which was inscribed on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding in 2009.
Published on the Secretariat's website.
The Intergovernmental Committee of the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization is holding its 16th session in Paris, France on December 13th through 18th. Representatives of Mongolian Ministry of Culture, Permanent Delegation of Mongolia to UNESCO, and Mongolian National Commission for UNESCO participated in the session virtually. On December 16th, the Intergovernmental Committee approved a $172,000 budget for the sustaining and passing down Mongol BIYELGEE project submitted by Mongolia in 2018 to preserve the Mongol BIYELGEE Mongolian traditional folk dance, which was inscribed on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding in 2009. The project will be implemented between 2022 and 2024 with the support from the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage Fund.
And now let me go.
In the global fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, Mongolia stood out as a positive outlier thanks to its vaccine diplomacy skills, which saw Ulaanbaatar City obtain vaccines such as AstraZeneca, Sputnik V, Sinopharm and Pfizer from partners around the world. Still in the summer of 2021, Mongolia experienced its highest infection spike to date, rising sharply from a few hundred daily cases in May to a peak of nearly 4,000 daily cases in September, leading to close to 2,000 deaths. The Mongolian Health Ministry reported on Friday that no COVID-19 related deaths have been recorded last week for the first time since April 4th. Coronavirus has claimed more than 2,000 lives since its first case was confirmed in March last year, according to the ministry. Meanwhile, 262 new COVID-19 cases have been reported across the country in the past day, bringing the national tally to 387,708, the ministry said. 4 of the latest confirmed cases were imported from abroad, and the remaining ones were locally transmitted, it said. There are now 7,294 active COVID-19 cases in the country, and over 4,700 of them are receiving home-based care, according to the ministry. So far, around 66% of Mongolia's 3.4 million people have received 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccines, while 841,202 people have received a booster. Thanks to relentless efforts made by Mongolia's Foreign Ministry and the Ministry of Health and the assistance from China, Russia and third neighbor countries, Mongolia has managed to turn the tide of the pandemic yet again. In the summer of 2021, despite Prime Minister Oyun Namso's optimism, the number of daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases and deaths rose sharply, receiving criticism from all sides of the political and social spectrum. However, the latest figures give hope that the country has turned the corner while still having a stockpile of vaccines to be administered. That has allowed Mongolia to push ahead with third doses or booster shots. While Mongolia has been active in the regional fight against COVID-19, other countries have also noticed Mongolia's success in vaccinating both urban and rural populations. On December 2nd, advisor to the Health Ministry, Batway Rachirwat, was interviewed by CNBC, and the US television network recognized Mongolia's astonishing success in bringing numbers down while receiving vaccinations and boosters. Russia and Mongolia have adopted a declaration that sets clear targets in terms of boosting cooperation between the two countries, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced following talks with Mongolian President Hursulghna. The Russian head of state added that the parties had prepared and planned to sign a number of intergovernmental and interagency documents covering many areas of cooperation, including the economy and trade. According to Vladimir Putin, the fact that the Mongolian president chose Russia as his destination for his first foreign visit makes it clear that Mongolia places much importance on promoting good neighborly ties with Russia. Certainly, we too are interested in close cooperation with our Mongolian friends, the Russian leader said, adding that 2021 marked the 100th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. President Putin stressed that Russia was the first country to recognize Mongolia's independence, and since then bilateral interaction had been progressing based on mutual respect and the willingness to take each other's interests into account. When speaking about economic cooperation, Putin emphasized that Russia was one of the Mongolia's major trade partners. According to him, despite the difficulties created by the coronavirus pandemic, trade between the two countries grew by 24% in the first 9 months of the year. Putin also pointed to the effective work of the Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic Research and Technical Cooperation. The Russian president noted that at a meeting in November, the Commission had outlined new specific plans for cooperation in the fields of infrastructure, mining, energy, agriculture and digital technologies. Russia and Mongolia also announced that both countries will continue their cooperation in combating the coronavirus and take measures to restore transport communication, according to the joint declaration approved on Thursday. This was the first meeting between Suhokhna and Vladimir Putin. In November, the Russian head of state sent congratulations to his Mongolian counterpart to mark the centennial of diplomatic relations between the two countries having been established. Putin noted in the message that increased cooperation between Moscow and Ulaanbaatar would boost peace, security and stability on the Eurasian continent. The Russian president emphasized that the relations between both countries were developing as a comprehensive strategic partnership. Rio Tinto Group will cancel $2.3 billion debt owed by Mongolia as the miner seeks to push forward with expanding the giant Oyu Tolgoi copper project that's been set by years of disputes, delays and cost blowouts. Rio's Chief Executive Officer Jacob Stausholm proposed improved terms for a 2015 financing agreement that underpins the mine's underground expansion, according to a letter dated December 30th to Prime Minister Oyutan Lafson-Namsra, posted on Mongolia's government website. Writing off the debt would speed up the timeline for when the country can start to receive dividends. Oyu Tolgoi is one of the largest known copper and gold deposits in the world. The Mongolian government has a 34% ownership, with the rest being held by Turkish Hill Resources Limited, which is 51% owned by Rio Tinto. The mine is Rio's flagship growth project, but has increasingly become a headache. Mongolia has been pushing for better terms at cost spiral, with the investment needed for the underground expansion ballooning to $1.4 billion more than originally planned. Rio in October said COVID-related disruptions had further delayed its started and added the further cost overruns. Rio Tinto and Turkish Hill made an offer which aims to reset the relationships and allow all parties to move forward together, the miner said in a statement. It reflects months of discussion will deliver greater economic value to Mongolia and build a stronger partnership, it said. Stausholm was in Mongolia last month for talks on Oyu Tolgoi, fueling a speculation that the deal was in the making. The agreement also means it means Oyu Tolgoi, the state-owned company that holds the government's equity in the project, won't incur additional debt after the mine is put into operation in the first half of 2023. Over the last 6 months, Rio Tinto shares have dropped by 22% amid the heavy decline of the iron ore price. However, over the last month, the Rio Tinto share price has actually risen by 8% amid news of the Mongolian reset to the tune of $2.3 billion. When the underground mine is eventually completed, it will be the world's 4th largest copper mine according to Rio Tinto. It's not the only copper interest that Rio Tinto has. China's zero-COVID policy continues to result in prolonged closures of the Mongolia-China border, causing supply chain disruptions, high inflation, and goods shortages. Mongolia's exports and income have also taken substantial hits. New coronavirus cases continue to rise in China's Inner Mongolia province, and there is understandably nervousness over the advent of the new Omicron variant. In keeping with the government's zero-tolerance COVID policy, strict lockdown measures thus remain in place. Beijing, meanwhile, places the blame at Mongolia's door for the continued COVID outbreaks in neighboring Inner Mongolia. Mongolia is dependent on China for 33% of its imports, 89.1% of its exports, and more than 60% of its overall economy. Border closure have dramatically reduced income in the export sector, while the inability to import products and materials from China have caused disruptions throughout society. Mongolian coal exports are down to about 1/3 of what they were last year. The reduced coal exports have contributed to shortages of both coal and energy in China, while causing economic hardships in Mongolia. Border closures have left 3,500 Mongolian coal truck drivers at Chinese dry points, stacking in long queues. South Gobi Resources, one of Mongolia's largest mining companies, reported that its sales dropped off 80% in August, leading to suspension of mining operations. Rising transportation costs and continued congestion in the logistics network have contributed to Mongolia's inflation rate hitting 9.6%, with food, meat, solid fuels, and gasoline experiencing the largest price increases. By September, meat prices in Ulaanbaatar had risen 16% and fuel prices 38.8%. Other factors driving inflation include increased cost of transport, logistics congestion, and supply-side factors. The border crossing has always been a bit of a red tape problem, with a great deal of paperwork needing to be completed for customs clearance. According to the Director of Operations at the international think tank for landlocked developing countries, Dulgon Demdot, presently it can be necessary to submit as many as 12 documents to send through a container full of goods. Since the border closure has made it impossible for Mongolia's exports to reach the sea, other options had to be explored, such as overland, through Russia, or via plane, which are all much more expensive. Nearly 2 years of COVID lockdowns and restrictions have hit Mongolia's economy rather hard. Right now, Mongolia is opening up, but the zero-tolerance COVID policy in China is keeping borders closed. As a result, Mongolian exporters are finding it difficult or impossible to keep up with export volumes. Sellers are having problems finding goods to sell or inputs for the manufacture of finished products. Some products are still terribly scarce, particularly fruits and vegetables. Many Mongolians are suffering from reduced income, while the whole population is experiencing high inflation. Most of these problems could be resolved if China would adopt a less stringent COVID policy. XANADU Mines has increased the mineral resource of its Kharmakhta project in the South Gobi region of Mongolia to more than 1 billion tons, including a high-grade component of about 100 million tons. The updated mineral resource estimates positions Kharmakhta as one of the biggest undeveloped copper assets held by a listed junior, the company said on Wednesday. The Kharmakhta resource of 1.1 billion tons contains 3 million tons of copper and 8 million ounces of gold, which is a 50% increase in contained copper and an 80% increase in contained gold reserves from the previous resource estimate. The higher-grade zones of more than 0.8% copper equivalent have grown from about 58 million tons in the previous estimate to just on 100 million tons with the latest update. This could be a real game-changer for project economics, with better defined and larger high-grade zones, setting the project apart from similarly sized ore bodies, with the high-grade component potentially unlocking project scenarios that could pave the way to put Kharmakhta into production. A significant increase in gold to copper ratios has resulted in a greater than 80% increase in contained gold, which means higher byproduct credits that will be reflected in lower all-in sustaining costs. The high-grade core and high gold to copper ratios of the Kharmakhta system are likely to be very important to future projects' economics, as they provide a degree of optionality for mine development that is not often seen in mining projects of this nature. CEO Andrew Stewart said that many of the biggest copper projects worldwide had logistics and social challenges, leading to significant delays and increased capital costs. The updated resource covers only about 30% of the 8-kilometer strike length of the Kharmakhta mineralized complex. The known deposit is open to the north and at depth, and recently drilling has already intercepted high-grade bornite outside the resource. The logo design for the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Japan has been determined. A total of 143 citizens submitted their works to the logo design competition, and the logo design designed by Baltoch, a citizen of Mongolia, won first place at the suggestion of the members of the bilateral logo selection committee. In the middle of the number 50, highlighted in a blue on a white background, the author represents the flags of the two countries with the symbol infinite, symbolizing the past, present and future friendship between the two countries, the desire to expand like the blue sky. The 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Japan falls officially on February 24, 2022. The relations and cooperation between the two countries have developed into a strategic partnership, and the countries are all cooperating in all areas. The logo design for the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Japan has been selected. Diplomatic relations were established between Japan and Mongolia on February 22, 1972, and in 2022 it will celebrate its 50th anniversary. Within the framework of this anniversary, many events are planned to strengthen the friendly relations between the two countries and deepen mutual understanding. A total of 143 citizens submitted their works to the logo design competition, and the logo design designed by Baltoch, a citizen of Mongolia, won the first place at the suggestion of the members of the bilateral logo selection committee. In the middle of the number 50, highlighted in blue on a white background, the author represents the flags of the two countries with the symbol infinite, symbolizing the past, present, and future friendship between the two countries, the desire to expand like the blue sky. Tashiro Ayane from Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, won the second place, and Matsumoto Rina and Muruzoka Mamoka from Ishiwaka Prefecture won the third place. There are plans to designate 2022 as the Mongolian-Japanese Youth Friendship and Exchange Year and organize celebratory events throughout the year in connection with the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's proposal to declare the diplomatic anniversary year as such. The celebration is planned to include high-level visits, exchange of 50 young leaders in politics, business, and art, academic conference, photography exhibition, documentary production, publication of a book about the history of relations between two countries, and business forums designed to connect companies. The prime ministers of the two countries also announced the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations as the year of friendship and exchanges between Japanese and Mongolian children and youth, and agreed to celebrate it on a large scale with the younger generation. Event friendship and exchange event between Japanese and Mongolian children and youth. In Mongolia, human trafficking is becoming more discreet and organized. Experts note that effective partnership between the government, civil society, and the private sector is essential in tackling this crime. According to experts from the US State Department, forced labor, also known as involuntary servitude, is also the biggest sector of the human trafficking in the world. And for the last few years, Mongolian men working abroad in mining and agriculture have been at high risk of becoming victims of human trafficking. Wages for illegal workers are much lower than the minimum wage in most countries, and most illegal workers have visa issues, which makes them vulnerable if they need legal help and protection.
From the moment a person realizes they have become a victim of human trafficking, the person seeks help and protection. But currently, Mongolia lacks a system for providing long-term protection to victims of human trafficking abroad and maintaining their safety. In addition, most victims face difficulties getting reparations for their losses.
In 2019, Mongolia repatriated 3 citizens who had become victims of human trafficking in China, Kazakhstan, and the Philippines. In 2020, 15 Mongolian citizens were repatriated from Malaysia. Most of the victims were lured by the promise of high-paying jobs abroad and afterwards faced abuse and exploitation in a foreign country with no money, no documents, and no way to find help. The US State Department's 2021 Trafficking in Persons report concludes that the government of Mongolia does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so. The recommendations include the need to create and fully implement formal procedures to guide government officials, including police, immigration, and labor authorities, in victim identification and referral to protective services, especially among men and boys. On December 8th, the Millennium Challenge Account Mongolia and the US government's Millennium Challenge Corporation held a public event to introduce MCC's updated counter-trafficking in persons policy.
Currently, MCA Mongolia is working on 2 major infrastructure development projects worth $350 million. During the entire project implementation process, we plan to adhere to and maintain human rights and gender equality. We will work toward eliminating illegal activity like forced labor and human trafficking.
According to the US State Department's 2021 Trafficking in Persons report, the government of Mongolia demonstrated overall increasing efforts compared to the previous reporting period, considering the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its anti-trafficking capacity. As a result, Mongolia remained on Tier 2 for not yet meeting international standards in efforts to stop human trafficking. Well, that's all for today's episode of Cycle. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.